First of all, in the last General Assembly, lawmakers passed several new laws limiting your powers in an emergency. Therefore, the Attorney General says what you're doing now with the school mask mandate is illegal and says that the Supreme Court should have a chance to weigh in on this first. Your reaction?
Well, the Supreme Court had a pretty clear ruling. It's the last major ruling they had, saying that emergency powers of a governor are based in statute, but also in our Constitution. That when you have something like a pandemic that takes the lives of 7,300 plus Kentuckians, you can't have 100 people trying to make decisions basically by committee. Nancy, I did what we had to do. The Delta variant is the most frightening form of COVID we have seen. Hospitalizations are doubling every 2 weeks. There are now hospitals in your viewing area that are full. Pediatric hospitalizations increasing at a rapid rate. And all of the schools that have tried to go back without masks have shown that it's not possible. Bowling Green, in 3 days, Warren County Public Schools had over 700 quarantines of kids and of parents. We've got to take this seriously. And if we want to protect lives, if we actually want our kids in school, and if we want to keep our economy open and running, this is a step we have to take. When's the last time the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce stood next to a Democratic governor on such a difficult issue and said, we absolutely support this because without it, we won't have the workforce we need because there'll be so many kids that are home quarantined that their parents can't show up to work. This is not a close call. It's the entire education community, the entire public health community, and the private sector all saying we got to do what's right. I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to have the courage to throw politics out the window. I wish other people would too.
But there's two parts of that first statement you made, sir, that some of those powers are constitutional, some are statutory. And looking at those statutory powers, I believe, paraphrasing some comments from the last court case, this is the law, it is as it is now, and we're upholding it. If you want the law changed, go change it. They did. Your response
Nancy,
to that?
That's not what that Supreme Court ruling says. It spends
that's a portion of it.
It spends a big portion of it talking about how the legislature is a part-time legislature, and therefore under the Constitution couldn't be expected to respond to emergencies. How the governor is the commander-in-chief and has at different points in time been found to have those emergency powers. Listen, if you strip the governor of these powers, there would be no requirement for masks in public schools. And those 700 kids quarantined after 3 days of school would just be the start. Worse, if you go back in time, we wouldn't have taken the steps that we took that stopped our hospitals from being overrun. But this is ridiculous. Our people, our lives are on the line. And those that won't go out and encourage people on a daily basis to get vaccines and who spread misinformation and or won't even have their own employees wear masks to stop the spread, are now pushing back against this. I care about the lives of our people. I'm putting them first. I wish others would too.
Since there are differing opinions about that last ruling, the AG, whose job it is to defend the laws of Kentucky, as you very well know, says the Supreme Court should weigh in on this first.
Well, the Supreme Court can weigh in at any time, but there is a Franklin Circuit decision that is in effect that has said that those laws that were passed are not valid. That's what's up in front of the Supreme Court. So a case doesn't start at the Supreme Court. Right. There are rulings that lead on the way up.
But it's gone to a higher court, and that question hasn't been settled. For the Supreme Court
to weigh in, what we're going to do is have children's in quarantine. We're going to have hospitals that are overrun, and we're not going to be able to stop the damage the Delta variant is doing.
2 weeks ago or so, you made some comments, I believe out in the field even, about how a government mandated mask order is not going to work to stay in time this far into the pandemic. And you said that's why we're calling on local officials to do this, businesses to do this. What changed in that brief time in your outlook?
Well, first, let me say we got a lot of buy-in. We had over 44 school districts doing the right thing, ranging from Fayette County Public Schools to Dawson Springs Independent. We had all of our health systems come together and mandate vaccines for healthcare workers. We've had groups like Churchill Downs and others pushing to do the same. So we've had a lot of good local leadership, and I am grateful for it. But it's a simple fact that we've seen that school systems that start and require masking are still in person and are not seeing spread. And those that don't are hosting the equivalent of a chickenpox party with the third leading cause of death in the United States. Unvaccinated kids in a unventilated room for hours at a time. Surely we know, dealing with COVID now, and now dealing with a variant that spreads faster than anything else, that's a recipe for disaster. But we've already seen it. It has played out, and we can't put more of our kids at risk, and we can't put our economy at risk. Remember, Chamber of Commerce up there saying we won't have the workers to show up and do their jobs if all the kids are quarantined. The entire education community, the chamber and the private sector, and every public health group, CDC, state, and every local health department says this is what we've got to do. So let's throw the politics out the window. The science is clear. The facts are clear. Let's push out the misinformation and all the voices. Let's do the right thing. Let's get vaccinated and let's beat this thing.
Had you taken a more cooperative outreach approach to these school districts, would that have kept the politics and the courts out of it? Do you think that approach might have made this focus stay on the virus and not on politics?
Well, we did take a cooperative approach. We gave everybody clear advice, and the advice was the same from the CDC to us to the local health departments. There was not one public health group that was saying that there is any chance that you can have a safe environment unless you do universal masking. Far too many of our schools still weren't willing to do it without any scientific backing at all, and then the results were going to be catastrophic. Again, I can't stress enough, in 3 days, if one school system has 700 people quarantined, don't you have a duty to act? Remember, these are our kids. They're not our property. They're not something that we make our political arguments through. We owe them a duty for their safety, and we owe them a duty to keep them in school. So without this mask mandate, number one, we will lose more people. The spread will be faster. Number two, our kids will not be in person. They'll be at home on a computer because so many of them are quarantined. And number three, we're going to lose huge productivity in our economy because people will be home with their kids and not coming to work. And that's not me. Those are all of the health officials that have said it, and that's the business community itself.
Some superintendents in central and southern Kentucky have lamented the fact that this decision was taken out of their hands. Particularly the superintendent of Science Hill Independent Schools wanted us to ask you why you issued this mandate 24 hours before school was to start, and why a one-size-fits-all approach to all school systems.
To protect the children of our Commonwealth. COVID in Science Hill isn't different than COVID anywhere else. It harms our children. Pediatric hospitalizations on the rise. Our hospitals are getting overrun. We're about to go through a really rough period, and I care about our kids more than I care about my own popularity.
Sir, can we expect a general mask mandate as we saw more than a year ago for Kentucky? Have you taken that off the table?
Only if it's necessary. This is what we're looking at. We have to keep our kids in school. We have to keep our economy open. We don't want to have to pull back capacity at all. We have two tools to defeat this virus if we want to make that happen. We have vaccinations and masks. And we won't need a mask mandate if people will go out there and get vaccinated. And those that are opposing or making noise about this step, here's the concerning thing. None of them even acknowledge how concerning the Delta variant is. And none of them spend time every day or even once a week pushing people to get vaccinated. So folks, if you're out there and you're unwilling to get vaccinated, you're the reason that we're wearing masks. And we need your help. Think about it. We owe a duty to one another, to protect one another, to be our brother and sister's keeper, to love our neighbor as ourselves, and not to engage in activities that can spread a deadly virus to our neighbors. This is all in our hands. If we can get this entire country vaccinated, we won't need a mask ever again.
What else can your office do now, short of mandates? Are you looking at incentives to get people to get vaccinated, to buy in on the mask in schools policy? What else are you looking at?
So first, on the incentive side, we have our shot at $1 million. We're going to have one more Kentuckian that's going to win $1 million for getting vaccinated. That's at the end of this month. We're going to have 5 kids, 12 to 17, that can win a free higher education. I actually just saw one. Addison in Western Kentucky came to an event we were doing. She's now going to go to the University of Kentucky. Really exciting. On the mask side, we're going to continue to spread the real information, the facts. You know what concerns me, and I get news coverage covering different people saying wild things, but it creates doubt within people when there is no doubt. The vaccines are safe and effective, and filling airways with people that say they're not, that can end up causing people's deaths, or at least not as many people being vaccinated. The same on masks. We know they work. They allowed us to be safe in person, in school at the end of last year, and all the school systems that have started with universal masking are doing really well. Now, we just need to get to a place where we recognize there is truth, there is fact, and make sure everybody has all those facts.
These are people in power who have been put in power by their constituents, superintendents, school boards. They seem to want a seat at the table. Whether or not the media is spreading misinformation or not, these are elected official people in these communities.
Being an elected official doesn't give you the right to stand up and say masks don't work when they do, and that can harm other people. To push back against vaccines, which are our way out of this, that's just simply irresponsible. And being elected doesn't give you a license to be irresponsible. But again, we know the facts. Vaccines are safe and effective against a virus that's killed 7,300 people. And Nancy, how many folks that are pushing back against this right now start out by saying, first, I want to recognize how serious this pandemic is. I want to encourage you to get vaccinated. We've already lost 7,300 people. No, they just go to the culture war or the argument. We don't need any of that. This isn't red or blue. It is life or death.
I'll give you a moment to reach out to the parents themselves who have been confused or who've been resistant, who are worried about their children's mental health and the masking and some other issues. I want to give you a moment to speak to them directly. What do you say to them?
Listen, I'm not just your governor. I'm a dad of 2 kids, a 12-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter. A 12-year-old has been vaccinated. These vaccines are so safe, I took someone I love more than life itself and got him vaccinated. My daughter's 11. She can't get vaccinated yet. What we have done is what we have to do to protect your children and mine. Unmasked, unvaccinated kids in a classroom, first of all, aren't going to last much of the school year because of quarantines. We've already seen it. And I want your kids and mine to be in-person learning. It is so important.
For parents,
I also want to make sure that our economy, which is on fire, creating better jobs than ever before, continues so that there is a better future for your family and everybody else's. And if we don't do this, you're going to be home with your kid when they're in quarantine instead of at work helping us to drive this economy. Listen, we are at war. More people have died than in any 2 wars we fought in here in Kentucky combined. And we need your help. You know, when my granddad was called to serve in World War II, he said, yes. That's the machine gun fire and everything else that we asked them to endure. We're not asking anybody to do that in this war. I mean, he fought in Europe to protect us, his neighbors. We're just asking you to wear a mask and get vaccinated to do the same. It is a small step, a patriotic step, one that lives out our values of loving our neighbor as ourselves. It's time to be our best. And if that means doing something a little bit uncomfortable, we can do that.
All right. We'll leave it at that, Governor. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.